Hello and welcome to Tournament Poker Project from Essex. My name's Jon.
And I'm Tain.
And we are two extremely recreational poker players. And this is our journey to get extremely professional and go and crush some tables in the World Series of Poker.
Yes.
How you been, Tain? What's going on?
It's been going well. I've not played an awful lot, but I've done a lot of studying, a lot of theory. I started a different job, so I've got essentially just shy of 2 hours on the train, 1 hour there, 1 hour back, and I'm really using that well.
A poker job?
No, not a poker job,
Oh.
Just a normal city job. But I'm really enjoying that. So I've got a lot more poker in my ears while I'm walking, and then a lot more poker. I've started going into Andrew Brokers' first book, which you kindly lent me.
Oh yeah. What do you reckon so far?
Yeah, it's good. It's reaffirming stuff I've already learned, but I like that it's doing that. It's quite important to go to the fundamentals and start up, and then just them little bits that I forget how to piece together, things like ranges, how to piece together what the purpose of value betting and what the purpose of bluffing is and things like that. So what have you been up to? How's your poker game?
I've got to be honest, I've not been playing even nearly enough. Since we had that night of some big tourneys, I've played maybe 3 or 4 sit and goes in total. Like, that is not enough. I tested myself on my GTO opening ranges at 3 different stack depths again, and I'm still like 98% like remember it, so that's enough. That's fine. At least I haven't forgotten that. But it's weird, like with poker, it feels like if you're not on it constantly, or at least a good solid few hours a week, you do start to lose some of the information that you've learned about things.
I should add to that. Yeah, you just reminded me why I haven't actually played recently. I have been playing. I subscribed to DTO. This isn't sponsored. This is a purely personal choice. I signed up to the high roller level of DTO. I finished my last job, had some cash from that, and I thought I'd invest in it. And I'll be really honest, like I really enjoy getting into that where I feel like I'm playing, but I also feel like I haven't risked anything. But I'm not chasing someone's tail or reacting to bad beats or anything, because I'm trying to learn.
Just for those that don't know, what is DTO?
So it's essentially a GTO game theory tool that teaches you how to play. The way it works is it basically sets up different scenarios, and then you pick a path. It'll give you the options. Do you want to check, raise, go all in, different bet sizes? You pick which one you think is appropriate for that position, and then it tells you if you were accurate, inaccurate, or if it was an outright blunder or mistake, depending on GTO.
Yeah, and okay, gotcha.
You can train pre-flop ranges. You can train free bet pre-flop ranges. You can choose your spot. So I'm pretty decent from the button, but the truth is most people aren't going to be bad from the button. And I'm trying to pick up on how I'm playing out the big blind, for instance. I'm getting better at finding complex spots. So there's certain spots that will be like check, then check raise, then call, then check fold. I'm getting a few of them where there's no other option, because a lot of it is balanced, and it will have, you'll get a tick and it will say good, but the truth is you took a 10% move where 90% of the time you should be taking the other move. And that kind of helps you see that although you're not wrong, if I'm making that decision because I thought I was correct, that's not good. I should make that decision thinking the other decision's correct, and I'm only doing this to balance, because it's kind of an indifference point. Does that make sense? So every time I only get a 10%, it's like, well, you're not wrong, but if that was what you thought was the right move, you're making a mistake.
Yeah,
in other positions,
you want to be getting there, especially when there's a big majority like a 90%, this is what you should do 90% of the time. You want to be thinking along those lines, don't you? If it's like 60-40, you might forgive yourself, and it's like a, there's a good reason for the mix or whatever. Okay. All right, well, look, should we delve into a hand?
Yeah, let's do it.
So
this is one of your hands, John?
It's one of mine. If you want to talk us through it, but just to set you up, this was a $22 multi-table tournament with bounties as well, on Poker Stars. So $22 entry. We were quite deep at this stage. I don't know if I don't think we were quite in the money, but yeah, it was definitely getting close.
Cool.
Yeah, over to you, mate.
So yeah, we're looking at blinds of 1,000, 2,000, 250 ante. So the pot at the start is that neatly 5,000? Yeah, I think it is. So a nice easy 5,000 pot. And our hero is sitting in the big blind with pocket fives. We've got 5 of diamonds, 5 of clubs. You're sitting on 47,000 chips. So we're looking at an M of just shy of 10, so 9.5.
Yep.
Looking around the table, we're playing 8-handed. Most players are sitting somewhere between 80,000 and 40,000, but the guy or gal sitting in the small blind is massive with 185,000 chips.
But he folds.
Oh yeah, sorry, and also the cutoff is sitting with 165,000, so they're really deep. 170,000, so they're really deep as well. And the action goes from early position, fold, round to the cutoff, who raises it 2.2 times the big blind, so 4,400. We then get a fold from the button, thankfully a fold from the small blind, and now it is on us with pocket fives. I would jam.
You would jam, okay. I mean, nearly 10M, it just feels a little bit too deep to be jamming. But I don't hate that. I feel like, yeah, it's one of those.
No, I made a mistake. Apologise to the listener. I would not jam. Simply because one of the benefits of jamming is that you've got, just shy of 5 big blinds in the pot, and a jam will win that enough times and put enough pressure on the raiser, because even though it's not, they can afford to lose the bet, they're not going to call it frivolously, but they will be raising it from the cut off quite they're going to have a wide range because they're looking to steal, knowing that you on the big blind at the very least are most likely to fold to a steal because you're covered. But this is a knockout, and they're going to call you quite wide, and that really diminishes the value of pushing, because you're going to get pushed by overcards a hell of a lot. So you are flipping, and that's not good. Now you are completely right.
You wouldn't. The deciding factor there to not jam is because it's a bounty. You're saying.
Yeah. The idea of the push is that you'll get the right amount of folds, but you're not going to. So you just have to assume that you're flipping, because people want your bounty, and they're willing to do that with, if they do that with 9-10 suited, you're in bad shape. That's not a good flip. As much as you do benefit from getting chips, because at the moment you've only got one person you cover. I don't think this is the spot. I think there's better spots to take, better positions. Otherwise, you just, every single time you've got a pocket pair, you're just shoving, and I don't think that's a good strategy either.
Okay, so is it a raise or a call? What do you reckon?
They've got a lot of trash in their range, but then fives might as well be trash as well. Without any reads on the player, I feel like a call is too weak. That's the only thing.
He's definitely quite loose. he's tried a few bluffs. He's not been sitting there idly waiting for the best hands. He's got the shared top bounty on the table. He's on $20. Most others are on 10 or 15. He's definitely been playing he plays it big. He plays quite aggressive from what I remember.
Yeah, I don't know what flop could come out that you can be happy with without hitting a 5, and that's quite set mining you're too shallow for.
I don't think but this is it. That's what I was going to say. In my mind, we're a bit too deep to jam, but we've got to put in 2,400, and if we do hit a 5 and we could get all of our stack in, then that's way over the 10 times what you're putting in the pot that you could win. You'd only need to be able to win like 25k to make set mining worth it for 2,400.
Okay, I believe that. I can
roughly. I mean, I'd have to do. I'm sure I've looked at it before, but that's roughly the maths. So at 47,000, I could potentially win, like get my double up. It feels like set mining's actually feasible.
Then isn't the better strategy a jam? So no, not really. A jam in this position only takes you up to essentially 55,000, and I don't think that makes any difference to your stack. You kind of okay. I think this is a gap in my knowledge about knockouts. I've tried listening to some knockout podcasts and YouTube ones. Doro Kinney's and Barry Carter put out quite a decent YouTube. And one of the things I think they talk about is what you said, like the value of set mining, especially in knockouts, is that they come with added value. That means it actually is worth chasing. Okay, no, I'm on your page. I'd say a call is the right move here. Ends the action. Right. It has potential.
So I do call.
Brilliant. And then it's a dream flop, which people need to know. So the flop comes out the 6 of clubs, the 4 of diamonds, the 3 of clubs, and a reminder that we're sitting there with 5 of diamonds, 5 of clubs. So we've picked up an up and down straight draw. We've got second pair, but for all intent and purposes, that's as good as top pair. And the action is on us. We've also got both suits. Not that it matters, but it's more of a blocker for the diamond and a potential backdoor for the club. The backdoor straight flush draw. Not that it makes a huge difference, but there's a lot going for us.
Yeah.
This is a point that I'm a bit unsure about. This is probably where on DTR I'm making mistakes. I still play 100% no donk strategy, especially against aggressive players. So I think the best strategy is check raise.
Okay, I like that. Let's take a look. So I do check, and villain checks behind,
and that's a danger. But it's also. It was, I think leading out, you're not defining the villain's range enough. Now, the fact they've checked behind is it doesn't tell us much, but apart from it's probably got rid of every one of the pocket pairs above a 6 from their range.
Yeah, I would say. So, that's good.
Yeah, cap their range a little bit there. But it hasn't hugely.
Pocket pairs are gone. So what are we left with then in his range as we go to the turn?
I wouldn't completely eliminate aces. I would only put them at, say, a half chance. And considering the rest of the pocket pairs are gone anyway, I'd kind of disregard it as unlikely. But I wouldn't rule it out simply because when a flop comes that bad, and you get checked to by the big blind, you kind of know that they're in for a check raise, but you really won't know where you are because it's such a big blind favouring range. Checking behind and seeing how they act on the next street might be quite valuable. But all the same, we're normally looking at anything that's not a pocket pair. I think still in their range. All the suited broadways, all the unsuited broadways, all the raggy aces.
Yeah, fair enough. What would you say the lowest hand in their range is? What's the bottom of their range here, unpaired range?
Given that they might be playing super loose,
Yep.
any connector like 7-8. It's not unheard of that they might even be sitting there with 5-7 suited, for instance, and have already hit the straight and think, well, this is too strong. Hopefully, and the other person catch up, which would be a mistake. But I think everything's a danger at the moment, but that doesn't mean you're bad. I think you've got good equity in hand, but you're not going to be looking to put too much in because you've not got enough equity to want to bluff. Sorry, you've got too much equity to want to bluff it because all that's going to do is get rid of their trash, and you don't really want to be doing that out of position. They'll just call with better, and then all of a sudden, any move that they make, you'd fold in. So
GTO wise, if he was playing GTO opening ranges from the cutoff, unsuited, obviously the pairs are gone, so we're talking about unsuited, unpaired cards now. So the bottom from there would be a 9, so 9 10, 9 jack, 9 queen, and then anything above that. If he's got suited cards, then it would be 6 and above. So he could have 6 7, 6 8, 6 9, 6 10. So he's got a huge range on the suited side of things, and a pretty big one unsuited as well, because he's just in such a late position, in the cutoff. So he's got a hell of a lot of hands that he could be playing here in this range. And if it's a suited one, 6 does just squeak in there, but he checked the flop, so I'm not too worried about the 6s. So yeah, just my take is I think you're definitely on the right lines, and his range is huge.
Yeah. I'd kind of a conflict of, we're playing the knockout, and when you're one of the big stacks, you can almost play any 2 cards, simply because the times that you hit, you get so paid off, because you don't just get their stack, you get the pot odds of whatever's in the bounty as well. Especially if there's, if it's multi-way, it just becomes almost, that makes up any deficit of calling with a bad hand, especially any 2 suited cards. But the person who was in the small blinds, who was going to act after them, does have them covered, and that completely reverses that dynamic. They don't want to be risking that against someone the only person who can knock them out. So I'd go back to this without any other information. Let's just stick to GTO cut-off ranges.
I'll just make sure I understand you right then. So what you're saying is, if there wasn't the small blind player there who's got this really big stack, if like this cut-off opener was the biggest stack, he would have a even bigger range, because he'd be playing any 2 cards, because he's got that much more likelihood of getting paid off and a bounty and whatnot. The value of opening is higher, so you can open wider. But because someone after him's got him out stacked, it tightens his range back up again to maybe nearer what GTO says you should do.
Yes. Then, I mean, I would be making a lot of assumptions about how well that player knows how to play knockouts, how well they know to react to other stacks at the table. It is just a very rough estimation of 2 conflicting changes to their range. So if we took out the person who is in the small blinds, they could, in theory, be playing any 2 cards, especially if they see that it's either you or the button were cooly or a bit weaker. They've got position. It's position on you at the very least. They can see the size of your stack. He's pretty precarious, and they could really apply a lot of pressure. And they're going to win a lot of plots just because they've got the ability to put that pressure on. And even the times that you're calling them, depending on the texture, they can smash that as well, because they're playing such a wide range.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the bounty adds so much extra value. I mean, we are getting a bit deeper now, so that bounty does diminish quite a bit, other than actual profit. Whereas earlier in the tournament, it's absolutely vital. That bounty is worth so much more. You might not cash for like 4 hours, so the value of taking a bounty is huge. Whereas if you're getting close to the money now, the value of the bounty starts becoming less important. The risk of going out the tournament without cashing and without a bounty is kind of a double punishment. But I don't know enough about PKOs to apply one principle higher than another. It's more just working it through, seeing if you responded saying, oh, well, actually, I don't think this player gave two hoops about the big stack. They were just throwing their chips around. And then it's like, okay, good. We'll get rid of their worry and make their range bigger. Just because that ball is meant to hit your range really well, but that's not quite so true in this situation. It's, that person could be raising what is unusually wide to the point that the big blind's wide range is almost equal, which is not how it's meant to be.
It's no, I love your thinking, Tain. I think it's very deep. Like you're thinking about. I mean, you can't. It's like almost like the ranges, but then those ranges are affected by the dynamic of the table, and you're kind of applying your understanding of maybe like the buy-in level, what types of people might be playing these stakes, and then how they might be thinking and playing, and what they might be noticing about the other stacks, which then affects their ranges and their range size. And then you're adjusting what you think their range is based on how you think they're perceiving the dynamic of the table. So I think it's great thinking.
Cool.
So we both check anyway, and then we go check over to the turn.
Right, and then the turn comes down a mixed blessing, an ace of hearts. So current board is 6 clubs, 3 clubs, 4 diamonds, ace of hearts. We are sitting on the big blind with 5 of diamonds, 5 of clubs. We've got just shy of 12,000 in the pot, and the hero is sitting with 45,000. So still significantly over. What we're looking at, 3.5 SPR. So work if we're not getting the stacks in at this moment, as in even if we get a really favourable river card, we're going to have to work to get stacks in, because the ace was too much of a good card for the cutoff for us to call anything more than a small bet, in my opinion. So I think this is a range check, especially with just pocket fives, which is essentially a second pair now in a draw.
I would agree. When I see the ace, and you're the big blind and you're playing a cut-off open, obviously even from any position, like if any position had opened, there's always that feeling of they've got more aces in their range than I have. But when I've got the time to look at this and think about this, he's in such a late position. And we've just said he's got so many other cards in his hand, and so many other hands in his range that don't contain aces, that it's maybe not as scary a card as I kind of instinctually feel it is. It's not really. If we were playing an under the gun +1 opener, then the ace would just be almost a sign to just give up the hand if we get bet into, but not from the cutoff. I think hands with aces in for a cutoff opening range that check a low flop I don't think it means a lot. I don't think there's that many in there. I think there's much more chance he's not got an ace than he has got one at the moment. I think there's far more hands in his range that don't have an ace than that do. So
no, I agree.
So we do check.
Yeah. The one thing I'd say about the ace, why it's good for their range, but I'm also really happy with it being the ace, is because as soon as that comes, I've got a very, very, very clear strategy for the hands. I know what my value target is, and it is someone who's just hit an ace. And it very much depends on their ability to put pressure on me with this bet. Anything shy of most of the pot, if not pot, or even an overbet, I'd be calling, because the value of hitting a good card. Well, there's two things. The value of hitting a good card. So any 5, I think you're winning. Any 2, any 7, I think they're all good cards for you. Possibly any brick, because the fact you called the bet and then you check again to them, if you miss, is you might get a check behind. Someone with a king who thinks, oh, well, they might have an ace, let's just check behind. Maybe they wanted to check raise or something. And you might even get to see showdown with your pair of 5s, and that might be good. So someone who's seen the ace come down, seen you check a second time for them, might bet king queen and think, well, it might as well represent. So I'd be calling everything, but they need the ability to perhaps even overbet in this position, to really put pressure, to really polarize their range. Have they just hit that ace really well, or are they completely bluffing? And anything that's moderate or anything that's drawing really has that difficult decision to make. So we both agree on the check. It goes around to the cutoff, and they bet half pot, 5,500.
Okay.
Cool.
So
100%.
Yeah, I think this is just a call, isn't it? And I do call, and we go to a river.
The river comes down, 9 of diamonds. So there is now 23,000 in the pot. You're sitting with just shy of 40,000. So an SPR of just under 2. You're massively covered. The villain's still got just shy of 160,000. And we now have a board of 6 of clubs, 3 of clubs, 4 of diamonds, ace of hearts, 9 of diamonds. So other than the straights that are already made, your straight didn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
The club flush didn't get there.
Yeah.
The 9, for all intent and purposes, is a brick.
It's a bit.
Trying to see.
If he was just out and out bluffing, he could have 9s in his bluffing range. Like he could have some 9s in his bluffing range. That's a possibility. If he had, like 9, 10 of clubs, he could have opened with as well. That would be. Although I don't think he'd have checked the flop with actually if he had 2 clubs. So those combinations of the 9 are gone. But there's still a lot of 9s in there. But I think there's also a lot of other hands. He's betting. I mean, he's checked the flop, and then the ace has come and he's bet it, and we've just flat called. But I don't know. I mean, is he? Yeah, is he?
If he's hit the 9, he's very likely to check behind, because you calling that bet, there are plenty of times that you've actually got the ace, but it might be a weak ace that you're willing to call down with, but you're not willing to bet because you're out of position. Maybe you're trying to set up a check raise, but they don't want to give you the opportunity for check raising. Yeah, I feel that 9 is 100% brick. Even if it's now got you beat, I don't think you'd need to commit any more chips to find out. I think a check is the most likely scenario. Someone who bets that 9, I think, doesn't understand what they're doing, because they're only going to get called by better hands.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit scary anyway when you consider the big blinds range against the cut-off open. We're quite wide, obviously, but the flop really does favour the big blind more than it does the cut-off at 3, 4, 6. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, what do we do? Like, it feels like if we check, he might have a bit of the board and bet it for value, or what might be perceived as thin value, or he might just check behind. I think if I check now, I'm just hoping he checks behind, I suppose.
The truth is that the 9 was really bad for our range because it doesn't allow us to represent anything. It doesn't allow us to represent a flush that's now come in, or a straight that's now come in, a decent. Yeah, we're not playing 6-4, for instance, where we had top pair, or even 9-4. The chances of us playing that and now have hit 2 pair, it just seems a bit fanciful, or a bit compared to the rest of our range. It's such a small part. They can probably bet us off that with impunity, like they're going to beat so much of our range. I feel we are left with a bluff catcher. But that's not a bad thing, because I think this is a really lovely board for a bluff catcher. I think so much of their range is concentrated in that 10 to king Broadway combos that if they do a small bet, I'd say it's worth a call. I'd say we're
just to elaborate that what Tain said there about all we're left with is a bluff catcher. Just to elaborate what we mean by that is that we can't bet here. What are we plausibly representing? Nothing. The villain's only going to call a bet here if he's got an ace, a 9, or maybe even a 6 that he for some reason checked on the flop. So he's only going to call with a better hand. So by saying all we've got is a bluff catcher, what we're saying is all we can really do is check and then call a bet on the end, because a bet on the end might be the villain knowing he's probably behind with maybe a king high, something like that. Say he's got king 10 or king jack or something like that. And our hand could then call that because we would be catching his bluff. So there's still a way to get extra value out of this hand, but it isn't by betting ourselves, which might feel a little bit counterintuitive, but that is the case. You kind of have to check, knowing that he's then got, yes, he's got hands that still beat you. He might have that ace, he might have that 9, but the only way to get chips is to have him bet when he's got less than the ace or the 9 or the 6. So effectively we're catching his bluff with our 5s.
Yeah. Perfectly, but yeah, our risk reward would be 100% risk for no additional reward. We'd only ever get the same payout, yet we risked whatever the bet is, and we could potentially lose the additional bet. Then the next question for us would be, if we are going to check, not sure what your action is, do you check?
We do check.
We do check. So then the next thing I'd say is, obviously, if they check behind, wonderful. We get to see if we win. If they do bet, it will be a quick bit of maths. How much of their range is Broadway, offsuit, suit connectors, that fit in that 10 to king range that aren't pairs, and how much is aces? That is kind of where I'm at. I mean, there are some combos that involve the 9, but they get quite dirty because there is there's potential 2 pair. There's other things that they might have bet in that scenario because they would have had a draw that could have been a combo, a semi bluff. So for instance, if they're playing with 8-9, they might have bet that flop knowing that they've got backdoors, 2 overs. That, you see what I mean? It's actually not the worst time to bluff at that flop. Or when the ace come, you might bet bigger. But I'd say if we feel that they've got more combos of Broadway than they have of raggy aces, or even strong ace, I feel that they would have bet a strong ace earlier. Someone who sits there with ace king, especially if they've got ace king with maybe the ace of clubs, I just feel that they would have bet that flop. So I do feel that it
should have been a C bet if he's got a decent ace. Well, start start doing those calculations, Tain, because the villain then bets 12.5k into the 22,800 pot. So it's just got a bit chunky.
Cool. All right. Well, let's do the maths. Let's get rid of the very top. How far do you reckon they're going down on their suited kings?
Suited kings probably down to, God, maybe all the way. It might have king 3. I think king 2, king 3, king 4, because suited you go down to like 6, 7, 6, 8, 6. So when it comes to a king, I mean, definitely all suited aces and possibly all suited kings as well. So I think maybe down to king 2, king 3 maybe.
Okay. And what's your offsuit? Considering this is
so offsuit I would say goes down to 9s, so 9, 10, 9 jack above.
Queen
And
7.
but with kings, he might go down to king 8. And did you say king 7?
Queen 7, queen 8.
Or offsuit?
Yeah.
No, I think maybe queen 8, but probably not. Probably queen 9, I would say.
So for the benefit of the listeners, what I'm doing is I've opened Flopzilla, which is a kind of a range checking, equity calculating software. And they've got a grid up with all the potential starting hands, all the potential combos. And I've put into it what we feel that their range is at this stage. There's a couple of hands I want to get away, actually, I've just realized. So one of the things I did was put in all of the raggy aces down to things like ace 3, ace 4, but I'm getting rid of them because all of them would have made straight draws or top pair and they would have been bet a bit more frequently. Some of the other lowers. Okay, so where I'm at is playing a pure bluff patching range. Okay, there is more Broadway, but some of that's taken up with what the board's looking at. But the fact is you're getting 3 to 1.
So what do you mean? How many hands in his range beat us, and how many hands? Does it tell us that much detail? Is it like a percentage? Or is that we mean 3 to 1? Like there's 3 times as many hands that we beat than we don't.
Yeah, there needs to be twice as many aces as there does all the hands that we beat. So there will need to be twice as many hands we're losing to as hands we're winning with for us not to call that. Does that make sense? So this would always be a good call. There's just not enough. He's not got enough winning hands that we're losing to for us to fold. So I feel this is mathematically good.
So what you're saying then, just to clarify, is that if we think he's capable of just betting this with, complete bluff, he's not had anything, he was trying to, not make a straight or anything. If he's just capable of completely airball bluffing, then at this point, with this bet size, just over half pot, we can safely say there are more hands in his range that we beat than there are hands that beat us, and so calling is profitable.
It should be. I'm just going to completely clarify that. But yeah, I feel that we don't need to do the full maths of range versus the boards and everything, simply because if we're going on the quite basic, quite easy to do in the middle of the hands, if he's got an ace, we're losing. If he hasn't got an ace, we're mostly winning. The 9 does have significance. There are a lot of king 9, queen 9 in their range, but there's also, as I said before, that starts connecting with the 6-3-4 a little bit more, quite a few of them, not the king highs, but maybe they don't. But the straight up equity is that the fives have got 54% equity, which is massive. Actually, I didn't realize it was that much on that board. So yeah, this is an exceptionally clear call. This could have been a pot size bet, and you should be calling.
Okay.
You're getting equity.
Well, I do agree, and I do call the call the river bet. So just to recap for our listeners, we were on the big blind, pocket fives, cut off opens, we flat call, and the flop comes 6-3-4. Turn is the ace, river is the 9. The flop was checked. The turn, the villain bets, and we call. The river, the villain bets, and we call. And the villain flips over, shows down queen 3 of hearts.
I had that in their range. I thought their suited queens went down that low.
So we beat him. I think that was a really good call, and the maths just done it there. I mean, it's one of those situations where in game, especially as it's getting deeper, you just start worrying about, well, he must have the ace he's betting, or he must have the 9 he's betting. No, just do, calmly do the maths like Tain done there, and you'll realise it's profitable to call. Because remember, it's not about playing the exact hand we think he's got. We can't know if he's got an exact hand. We have to play his range. So if you imagine, you play every single one of those, you're going to win more often than you lose, and that just equals profit over a long term. So queen 3, it was in there. It was probably on the outskirts of his range, but it's a suited queen 3, so it's probably at the bottom. It's I don't know if GTO says to play queen 3 suited, maybe queen 5 suited, but like you said, Tain, he's got the bounties to consider as well. Maybe he was considering that, and that was part of the dynamic, and that was part of his decision making to open. He's kind of turned his hand into a bit of a bluff. On the flop he's hit bottom pair. The turn comes, it's the ace. He's almost like he's gone, well, I've got bottom pair, I'm going to represent the ace, put a bet out. But when I've flat called, looking at this from the villain's point of view, he's probably thinking, well, he's flat called, I've represented the ace. He's probably got a bit of the board, but so I think villain must know, well, we must be a little bit ahead if we're calling his bet on the turn there. But he continues to bet on the river, and really that's only a bluff. It can't be a value bet. That doesn't make sense. What would he be targeting as a value target in pocket twos? That's extremely unlikely, I would say. So really he turned his bottom pair into a bluff. And to be fair, if we weren't paying attention, or we was really, being overly cautious and nervous about aces hitting the board when we're the big blind, and we could have folded that. It wasn't like he was doing ridiculous sized bets that looked suspicious. He was betting half pot. It wasn't out of the realms of possibility that he did have an ace and a 9. It kind of looked plausible, but the maths done it in the end. The maths just told us, well, yep, he could have an ace, he could have a 9, but he probably hasn't. I think the key part for me in this hand, Tain, was just nice, confident ruling out of pocket pairs when he checked the flop.
Just as you said that, working out exactly that. Like, that did play a big part. It didn't make a huge difference to the overall equity at the end. It was always a call. So his river bet was ill-conceived. He needed to polarize a lot more and put a lot more pressure on us. He made that easy to call with a bluff catcher. So, I mean, golden rule, if you're going to bluff on the ends on a board that someone's called when an ace has turned up, you're either got to try to bet big enough to get them off that ace, which is going to be incredibly difficult, or pick a better bluff, or just check behind. So if maybe you're going to try see if your threes are good, or just give up.
Just give up.
You need to be putting the right amount of pressure on to get the right folds that you're looking for. And he didn't even give us a difficult choice in the end. It turns out we had massive equity over the bet.
Yeah, I think maybe a jam on the river for my tournament life. I mean, that might have got it done. I might have thought twice. The maths wise, I think the maths would have possibly still been there to just, any amount he bets, the maths is probably there because I've got more chance of winning it than I haven't. But that doesn't always take priority when you're, when it's your tournament life, when you've been playing the tournament for hours online and you want to stay in it, you want to get to that final table. Sometimes you make very non-GTO decisions. So sometimes, especially at these lower stakes, jamming the river forces someone to throw sense out the window and, just fold because they want to stay in it.
Yeah. What I really love about this is how, I've listened to some of our older episodes because I like to listen and see what our progression is and try to go back over my previous thinking and rework it for the new things I've learned.
Yeah.
And I think there was a similar position where we spent so long talking about the bet size. Oh, what does that tell us? Is he doing that as a bluff? Why would he not want to bet bigger if it's value and smaller if it's that? And I don't even think about that this time. It's simply, what odds is he giving us? Bluff catch up. Oh, tip. Seconds.
Yeah. We have to call it. We have to call with pocket fives of a 6-3-4 ace-9 board. Definitely.
We're winning. Amazing.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. And then one thing we didn't mention, which is actually really important, is that calling that bet to win what is 47,800 is extremely significant for your tournament status. So that puts you above another stack at the table, which is invaluable, but it puts you in touching distance of 3 others. You just need to win a couple of blinds, steal a couple of blinds, and all of a sudden you can take out most of the table. And that is absolutely golden in PKOs. So that is also, that would have, if this was an indifference point, that alone would have given you the right odds to call. Another thing the villain should have thought of before putting in quite a weak bet essentially on the end there. Yeah,
we got you, villain. Take that with your queen 3 suited.
Thank you ever so much. It was donating chips to the cause.
Well, let's say any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, really enjoyed that. I loved what was going on in the hands. I loved the hand reading. I loved what we applied. Brilliant.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thanks so much, Tain. Always a pleasure. And thank you to our listeners. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Thank you, everyone. Please subscribe. Please listen. Tell all your friends.